The days in the Rivas house passed slowly, but something inside Lila began to shift. Each morning still started with chores, the clinking of dishes and the smell of coffee drifting through the hall. But now she had something to look forward to. Those quiet moments in the afternoon when Mira would sneak into the small laundry room or the back garden, carrying her notebook full of song lyrics. They would sit together while Lila folded clothes or peeled vegetables. Mira would hum a few lines and Lila would gently correct her tone, her breathing or her rhythm. There was something pure about those lessons. Two people sharing music not for fame, not for money, but for the simple joy of it. At first, it was all about the upcoming school talent show. Mira wanted to win, but she also wanted to prove something, to herself and to her mother. Mrs. Rivas had always believed her daughter was shy and fragile, too soft to stand on stage. But Mira wanted to show she was capable of more. Lila saw a reflection of her younger self in that determination. Every night after everyone had gone to bed, Lila sat by the small window in her room, looking out at the stars. Sometimes she would close her eyes and imagine the sound of applause again. She didn't miss the fame anymore, not exactly, but she missed the connection, the way singing made her feel alive. She often whispered to herself, "Maybe this is my second chance, just in a different form." One evening, as she was helping Mira practice a soft ballad, Mira's father, Mr. Rivas, happened to pass by the door. He paused for a moment, listening quietly. When the song ended, he stepped in with a smile. "That was beautiful," he said warmly. "You have a lovely voice, Mira." The girl's eyes lit up. "Lila taught me." The months passed quickly, and life for Lila began to bloom again in quiet ways. Every afternoon, her small music class filled with laughter and the sweet sound of young voices. What started as a few lessons behind the Rivas house had turned into a full group of eager learners. Children from all over town came to her little space with notebooks and excitement in their eyes. Some came shy, afraid to sing, while others sang too loudly and off-key. But Lila loved them all the same. She taught them not just to sing, but to feel. "Don't chase perfection," she often said. "Chase emotion. When you sing from the heart, even a simple note can touch someone's soul." Her words came from her own pain, but they sounded like hope. The people in town who once whispered behind her back now began to talk differently. They saw the change in her, how she carried herself with calm strength. The same woman they once pitied was now someone their children admired. Slowly, the old gossip faded away, replaced by quiet respect. Mira, of course, was always by her side. She had grown confident since the school talent show, and she often helped with younger students. The bond between the two had deepened beyond teacher and student. They were like family. Mrs. Rivas noticed it too. Though she never said much, her attitude toward Lila had softened. Sometimes she even came outside with a tray of juice for the children, pretending it was just to be polite, but everyone could see her heart was changing too. One morning, the local community center announced it would be hosting a cultural night, a small event where townspeople could showcase their talents. There would be songs, dances, and even a few short plays. When Mira saw the poster, she ran straight to Lila, waving it with excitement. "Let's perform," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You can sing with us. Everyone should hear you." Lila laughed softly. "Oh no, my dear. This is your time now." "But it's not just for kids," Mira insisted. "You could sing with all of us, maybe something together. You always say music should be shared." Lila hesitated. The idea of performing again, even in a small town event, made her heart beat faster. It had been years since she stood before an audience. A part of her missed that feeling. The stage lights, the anticipation, the moment when music connected her to everyone listening. But another part of her was afraid. What if people judged her again? What if old memories came rushing back? That night she sat awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She remembered the noise of applause, the flashes of cameras, and the pain that followed. Then she thought of her students, their smiling faces, their courage. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this wasn't about fame, it was about healing. And maybe singing again could finally close the wound that fame had left behind. By morning, she had made her decision. "All right," she told Mira with a gentle smile. "We'll perform together." The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. "Lila Mendoza is going to sing again," people whispered. Some were curious, some skeptical, but most were excited. They remembered her voice from long ago, and even those who had once judged her wanted to see the woman who had found her way back. The weeks leading up to the event were filled with practice. Lila helped the children prepare a medley of simple songs that spoke about hope and kindness. The melody was cheerful, the lyrics easy to remember, but she also planned to sing a solo piece at the end. A soft ballad she had written herself, one she had never shared with anyone before. It wasn't about fame or forgiveness. It was about peace. The night of the performance arrived. The community center was packed. The air buzzed with chatter and excitement. Families filled the seats, and the stage glowed under warm lights. Lila stood backstage with the children, adjusting their ribbons and whispering words of encouragement. "Remember," she told them, "sing like you mean it. It's not about being perfect, it's about being true." When it was their turn, the children ran on stage, smiling and waving at the crowd. The first few notes played and the room quieted. Their voices rose in harmony, bright, innocent, and full of joy. Lila stood at the side, clapping softly, her heart swelling with pride. She could see parents in the crowd wiping tears from their eyes. The little group of singers she had started in a laundry room was now filling an entire hall with music. When the children finished, the applause was thunderous. Mira stepped forward and said into the microphone, "There's one more song. Our teacher will sing it for you. She's the reason we're all here today." Lila froze. She hadn't planned to be introduced like that. But the audience began cheering her name softly. "Lila, Lila!" And suddenly it felt like the world had come full circle. Taking a deep breath, she walked onto the stage. The lights felt warm on her skin, and the murmurs of the crowd faded into silence. She looked out and saw faces, some old friends, some strangers, and her parents sitting proudly in the front row. Her mother was already crying. The music began. Lila closed her eyes and let the first note escape her lips. Her voice was softer now, matured with age and life's weight, but it carried something far more powerful than before: truth. The song told of loss, forgiveness, and rediscovery. It spoke of stars that fall but still shine, even from the ground. It wasn't a song for fame. It was a song for every person who had ever been broken and found the courage to stand again. By the time the last note faded, the hall was completely still. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the applause came, loud, long, and filled with love. Some people stood, clapping with tears in their eyes. It wasn't like the applause she once knew in the big city. It was deeper. It came from hearts that understood her story. Lila bowed, tears rolling down her cheeks. When she looked at Mira, the girl was smiling so wide it made her laugh through her tears. She realized then that this small, honest moment was worth more than all the fame she had ever tasted. After the show, people surrounded her with congratulations. Parents thanked her for teaching their children, and neighbors praised her courage. Mrs. Rivas, who had always kept her distance, came forward too. For the first time, she hugged Lila gently. "You reminded us what real beauty sounds like," she said quietly. "Thank you." That night, as Lila walked home under the stars, the air felt lighter. She passed the old market, the same one where people once whispered about her, and smiled to herself. Now those whispers had turned into greetings and waves. Life had changed in ways she never expected. Back in her small room, she sat by the window, holding the small ribbon she had once given Mira. She could still hear the echoes of the applause in her heart, not the kind that fades, but the kind that stays forever. She whispered softly, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, but to life itself for giving her another chance to sing. In the days that followed, more people came asking for lessons. The community center invited her to lead a permanent children's choir. Even a few local schools reached out, wanting her to help with their music programs. Lila accepted with joy. She was busier than ever, but this time she was doing what she loved for the right reasons. And though she still cleaned the Rivas' house and did her daily chores, she no longer felt like a servant. In her heart, she was free. The world had seen her rise and fall, but now they were seeing something even stronger. The quiet glow of a woman who had learned that true light never disappears. "It just finds a new way to shine." Mr. Rivas turned to her. "You used to be a singer, didn't you?" His tone wasn't mocking, it was curious, even respectful. Lila nodded shyly. "Yes, sir. A long time ago." "Well," he said with a kind smile, "you still carry the voice of someone who loves what she does. Keep helping her. It's good for the soul." When he left, Lila felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: encouragement. For months she had lived in silence, careful not to draw attention. But now someone saw her again, not as a servant, but as a person with something to give. The next few days were filled with quiet excitement. Mira practiced every evening, and Lila worked harder than ever to make sure everything was perfect. She even stitched a small ribbon into the girl's dress as a good luck charm. "It will remind you to be brave," she said with a smile. The night before the competition, Mira was nervous. "What if I forget the words?" she asked, pacing the room. "You won't," Lila said gently. "You've practiced every day. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about feeling the song. The audience will believe you if you believe yourself." Mira hugged her tightly. "Thank you. You're the best teacher ever." The next afternoon, Lila wasn't supposed to go to the show. Mrs. Rivas had said firmly, "It's a school event. The maid isn't needed." Lila nodded respectfully, though her heart sank. She wanted to be there to support Mira, but she understood her place in the household and didn't argue. However, fate had its own plan. After finishing her chores that evening, Lila couldn't resist walking near the school. She stood behind the tall fence at the edge of the courtyard, where she could hear the faint sound of music from the hall. The night air was cool and her heart beat fast. She listened as the host called each performer, clapping quietly for every child. Then she heard it, the sound of Mira's name. She pressed her hand against her chest, whispering, "You can do this." Inside the hall, Mira stood on stage, the lights bright in her eyes. For a moment she froze. The audience looked blurry, her legs felt weak, and her throat was dry. But then she remembered Lila's words, "Believe yourself." She took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice trembled at first, but as the melody grew, her confidence did too. By the second verse, she was smiling, her voice clear and strong. The audience sat still, completely captivated. And outside, behind the fence, Lila closed her eyes and listened with tears running down her cheeks. It was as if she could feel every note in her bones. Mira was shining, and Lila knew she had helped light that glow. When the song ended, the room exploded with applause. Mira bowed, beaming with pride. She didn't win first place that night, but she won something much more important, the courage to believe in herself. After the show, she ran home, her ribbon fluttering. Lila was waiting by the back gate. "You did it," Lila said softly. "You were wonderful." Mira hugged her so tightly that Lila almost lost her balance. "I could hear you in my head," the girl whispered. "You were right there with me." Before Lila could answer, they heard footsteps. Mrs. Rivas was standing by the doorway, her expression unreadable. Lila quickly stepped back, expecting anger. But instead, the woman's eyes softened slightly. "She sang beautifully," Mrs. Rivas said quietly. "I suppose. I should thank you." Lila didn't know what to say. "She's very talented," she replied simply. All she needed was a little guidance. From that day forward, the atmosphere in the house changed just a little. Mrs. Rivas wasn't exactly warm, but her tone grew less sharp. She even began to greet Lila in the mornings. Mira, of course, was happier than ever, and every free moment she had she spent with Lila learning new songs. One afternoon, Mr. Rivas invited Lila to join the family for lunch as a gesture of appreciation. She was hesitant but accepted politely. As they sat around the table, he said, "You have a gift, Lila. Have you ever thought of teaching music again?" Lila hesitated. "I'm not sure anyone would want to learn from me now." "You might be surprised," he said kindly. "Talent doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right time to be noticed again." His words stayed in her mind for days. That night, she wrote a small note and pinned it to the local community board. Music lessons for children, simple songs, beginner level, affordable and patient teacher. She didn't expect much, but by the next week, 3 parents had already called. Soon Lila found herself teaching after work, just an hour each evening in her little room behind the Rivas house. At first she taught 2 children, then 5. Within a month she had a dozen students. The sound of laughter and music began to fill the evenings again. It wasn't the stage she once knew, but it was something even more meaningful. Mira often joined the group, helping younger kids with their lines. The children adored Lila, not because she was famous, but because she treated them with kindness. She never scolded or compared them. She always said, "Every voice has its own color. Don't try to sound like someone else." Sometimes when she looked at her little group of students singing together, Lila felt tears in her eyes. She realized that even though life had taken her far from the stage, she had found a new one that didn't need bright lights or applause, just smiles, laughter, and songs. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mira sat beside her and said, "You know, I think you're still a star." Lila chuckled softly. "No, dear. I'm just someone who loves to see others shine." But inside, she knew that wasn't entirely true. The star inside her hadn't gone out. It had just learned to shine differently. And though the world outside still remembered her as the fallen singer, in that small corner of life, surrounded by children and their innocent voices, Lila had finally found what she had been missing all along: peace. "Would you like me to move on to part 4 next?" Keeping Lila thought that coming home would make everything easier, but life had other plans. The small town that once adored her had changed. Some people looked at her with pity, others with judgment. Whispers followed her through the marketplace. "She used to be famous," some said softly. "Now look at her." She pretended not to hear, but their words sank deep into her heart. Still, she tried to stay strong. Her parents were her biggest comfort. Her mother always smiled and said, "We're just happy you're home." Her father would wake early and make tea for her, leaving the cup by her bedside before going to work. Their quiet love helped her get through each day, even when she felt lost. But the savings she brought from the city were running out quickly. Lila tried to find small jobs, helping with sewing, tutoring kids, and singing, but work was scarce and people were hesitant to hire her. Some thought she was too proud for simple work. Others feared the gossip that followed her. The more she tried, the more doors seemed to close. One afternoon, as she was walking back from the market, she saw a notice pinned to a board outside the grocery store. It read, "Housemaid needed. Full-time position. Room and meals provided." She stood there for a long moment, reading the words over and over. Her chest tightened. A housemaid. She had once performed on grand stages, worn elegant gowns, and traveled across cities. Now she was thinking of cleaning someone's home. But reality doesn't wait for pride. She needed to survive. That night, she made up her mind. The next morning, she put on her neatest dress and went to the address written on the paper. It was a large house at the edge of town, owned by the Rivas family, who were known for their wealth and high social status. The gate was tall and the garden inside looked like something out of a magazine. Lila hesitated before ringing the bell, her palms sweating. A woman in her 40s, Mrs. Rivas, opened the door. Her eyes scanned Lila from head to toe. "You're here for the maid position?" the woman asked sharply. "Yes, ma'am," Lila replied, trying to sound confident. "I saw the notice." Mrs. Rivas raised an eyebrow. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" Lila forced a small smile. "Perhaps you've seen me somewhere. I used to work in the city." "Well," the woman said after a pause, "we need someone who is disciplined and quiet. The last maid left because she couldn't keep up." "Can you handle hard work?" Lila nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I can." And just like that, her new life began. Her room was small, a single bed, a tiny window, and a cupboard for her clothes, but she was grateful for it. Her days started early before sunrise. She swept the floors, washed dishes, did laundry, and sometimes helped in the garden. It was exhausting but honest work. Every night she fell asleep with sore hands but a calm mind. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't pretending to be someone else. Still, there were moments when memories from her old life came rushing back. When she heard music from a passing radio, she'd pause, remembering the applause that once filled her ears. When she cleaned the mirror in the living room, she sometimes caught a glimpse of herself and wondered where the woman on the posters had gone. She didn't hate her new life, but she couldn't help missing the one she had lost. The Rivas family had one daughter, a little girl named Mira, about 10 years old. Mira was shy and quiet but curious. From the first week, she seemed fascinated by Lila. One day, while Lila was dusting the bookshelf, Mira came up behind her and said softly, "You sing when you clean?" Lila smiled without turning. "Do I?" "Yes," the girl said. "It sounds nice. My teacher says singing helps people feel brave." Lila laughed a little. "Your teacher is very wise." After that, Mira often followed her around, asking questions about music and stories from the city. Lila tried to avoid talking about her past, but the child's innocence made it hard to say no. So she told her simple things, about the lights of the city, the sound of big theaters, the joy of performing. Mira listened with wide eyes as if she were hearing a fairy tale. One evening when the family was out, Lila was cleaning the hallway when she heard the piano in the living room. Mira was sitting at it, pressing random keys. Lila watched for a moment, then walked close. "Would you like me to show you something?" she asked. Mira nodded eagerly. Lila sat beside her and played a few gentle notes. The melody was soft and warm, something she used to sing years ago. Mira watched her fingers move with amazement. Then Lila began to hum. Her voice was quiet, like a whisper carried by the wind. The house felt alive again for a moment. When she stopped, Mira clapped softly. "You should sing more," the girl said. "You sing like in movies," Lila smiled. "Maybe one day you'll sing better than me." That night, as she lay in her small room, she thought about the girl's words. She hadn't sung properly in months. Fear and shame had taken away her confidence, but somehow that little moment with Mira had stirred something deep inside her, something that refused to die. Days turned into weeks. Lila became part of the household, though Mrs. Riva still treated her with distance. She rarely spoke to Lila except to give instructions. But Mira's warmth made the work lighter. On quiet afternoons when the family was out, the two would sit by the piano, learning songs together. It was their small secret. One day, Mira came running to Lila holding a flyer in her hand. "There's a talent show at my school," she said excitedly. "I want to sing, but I'm scared. Will you help me?" Lila hesitated. "Your parents might not like that. Please," the girl begged. "I'll practice really hard." Looking at her hopeful face, Lila couldn't say no. She began helping Mira after finishing her chores, teaching her how to breathe, how to hold her voice steady, and most importantly, how to sing with feeling. "Don't just sing the notes," she told her. "Tell the story." As the days passed, Lila found herself smiling more. Teaching Mira reminded her of the joy she once felt when music was her whole world. Sometimes she forgot she was a servant. In those moments, she was simply a teacher, a mentor, and an artist again. But not everyone saw it that way. One afternoon, Mrs. Rivas walked into the living room unexpectedly and found Lila and Mira singing together. Her expression darkened. "What is going on here?" she demanded. Mira froze, clutching the piano stool. "We were just practicing for school, Mama," she said nervously. Mrs. Rivas turned to Lila, her tone sharp. "You are here to work, not to play music. Don't forget your place." Lila lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It won't happen again." That night, she sat alone in her room, feeling the familiar ache of humiliation. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet she felt small again. Still, she told herself that she would continue helping the girl in secret. She couldn't let her dream die just because someone thought it didn't matter. The next morning, when Mira came to see her, Lila whispered, "We'll keep practicing. But quietly, all right?" The girl smiled and nodded, and so they did. Even though Lila's world had changed completely, her heart hadn't. The same fire that once made her shine on stage still lived inside her, even if it was hidden behind plain clothes and tired hands. She didn't know it yet, but helping that little girl was about to change everything again. It would be the first spark of light in the darkness that had followed her for so long. The small town of La Mera was known for its quiet mornings, its old market square, and the sound of church bells that marked the passing hours. But among the whispers of ordinary lives, one name once rose above all: Lila Mendoza. She wasn't born into wealth or power, but she carried something far rarer, a voice that could make even the coldest heart pause and listen. As a child, Lila sang in the church choir. Her mother worked as a seamstress, her father as a bus driver, and money was always tight. But when Lila sang, the whole house felt brighter. People passing by would stop outside their window to hear her. The neighbors began calling her the little songbird, and soon small-town talent shows became her stage. She never asked for applause, but the way she sang made people feel things they couldn't explain: sadness, hope, and joy all at once. When she turned 17, a talent scout came to La Mera for a local competition. Lila didn't even plan to join. It was her friend Clara who secretly signed her name. When Lila stepped on stage, her hands were trembling. But the moment she began to sing, the room fell silent. Her voice carried the kind of emotion that didn't just impress, it touched souls. When she finished, there was a pause, then a roar of clapping. That night changed her life. The scout offered her a chance to audition for a national performance company in the city. Her parents hesitated, They had never imagined their daughter leaving home for such a big world. But they knew her gift was special. So with a small suitcase and her mother's old shawl wrapped around her shoulders, Lila left for the city, promising to make them proud. City life was a different world. Bright lights, endless traffic, and people rushing everywhere. At first, Lila felt invisible among the tall buildings and confident strangers. But she held on to her dream. The first few months were hard. She shared a tiny apartment with 2 other girls and often skipped meals to afford singing lessons. Still, she never lost her spirit. Every night she would stand by her window, hum softly, and imagine her voice reaching her parents back home. Her big break came unexpectedly. One evening, a lead actress in a stage production lost her voice before a show. Lila, who was part of the chorus, volunteered to step in. Everyone laughed at first. No one thought a background singer could carry the main role, but the director, desperate for a replacement, gave her a chance. When Lila stepped under the lights, her heart pounded like a drum. She remembered her mother's words, "When you sing, sing like the world is listening." And she did. The audience was spellbound. Her voice soared across the hall, filling every corner with raw emotion. When the curtain fell, the crowd erupted in applause. The director was stunned. By the next morning, her name was all over the city's newspapers. A new star is born. From that night, everything changed. Over the next few years, Lila's fame grew fast. She was invited to sing at festivals, appear on television shows, and star in more productions. Her posters hung on street corners. Her name became a symbol of talent and grace. Wherever she went, cameras followed. People admired her not only for her voice but for her humble nature. She never forgot where she came from. She sent money home to her parents, bought them a new house, and even funded music lessons for children in her town. But fame, as Lila would soon learn, is like a flame. It shines bright, but burns fast. As her popularity grew, so did the expectations. Every show had to be perfect. Every interview had to sparkle. She barely had time to rest. Managers controlled her schedule, stylists decided how she looked, and producers dictated how she spoke. Slowly, the girl who once sang freely began to feel trapped behind the mask of Lila the star. Despite the pressure, she gave her best. When she stepped on stage, she still felt the same magic that once filled her heart. The cheers, the lights, the music, it all felt worth it for those few minutes of connection with her audience. But behind the scenes, the world of fame was colder than it appeared. People she trusted began to see her not as a person, but as a product. Flattery replaced friendship. Promises turned into contracts. Among her circle was a fellow performer named Adrian, charming and ambitious. He often told Lila how much he admired her talent, how he believed they could rise together. He became her closest friend in the industry, or so she thought. He introduced her to powerful producers, guided her decisions, and became her voice in business meetings. Lila, naive and kind-hearted, believed he truly cared. But while she was focused on her art, others were focused on using her name. One evening, during a celebration event, a journalist captured a misleading photo of Lila and a well-known married producer in conversation. By the next morning, headlines screamed scandal. Starlet Lila's secret affair, they said. It was all false, but the gossip spread like wildfire. Adrian promised to handle it, yet rumors kept growing. Sponsors backed away, and producers began replacing her with new faces. For the first time, Lila felt the world turn against her. The same people who once praised her now whispered behind her back. The same magazines that called her the nation's sweetheart now called her a fallen star. She tried to explain, but the media had already made up its mind. Even Adrian started distancing himself, claiming he couldn't risk his own reputation. She lost everything she had built, her roles, her endorsements, her fans. She found herself alone in her apartment, staring at the trophies on her shelf. They once symbolized her success. Now they only reminded her of what she had lost. Nights felt endless. She stopped singing altogether. Her voice, once filled with life, fell silent. Months later, she received a letter from her mother. It wasn't full of pity, it was full of love. "Come home if you need to," her mother wrote. "You don't have to shine for the world, my dear. You only have to live." Those words broke the wall around Lila's heart. She packed her few belongings, left the city without telling anyone, and returned to Lamera. When the bus arrived at the station, everything looked smaller than she remembered. But the air was cleaner, the sky wider. Her parents welcomed her with open arms, no questions asked. The neighbors whispered when they saw her again, but she didn't care. She was tired of pretending. She just wanted peace. In the following weeks, Lila tried to adjust to a quiet life. She helped her mother with sewing, helped children rehearse for church plays, and spent hours sitting by the river, thinking about who she had become. Sometimes she still sang softly to herself. The birds would stop on nearby branches as if listening. The sound wasn't as strong as before, but it was still beautiful, honest, gentle, and real. And though she didn't know it yet, her story was far from over. The world might have turned its back on her, but her gift, the light that once made her shine, was not gone. It was only waiting for the right moment to return.